Hello, this is Melissa, the insurance exam queen, and we're talking about coinsurance and the math behind coinsurance. So I already started teaching this lesson, so I'm going to catch you up real quick. Coinsurance is the insurance company says that you need to cover your house for the full replacement price of your house. If their job is to rebuild it after a fire, you need to be carrying as much coverage as it would cost for them to do that. So in this example, we're saying that the house is $100,000 to rebuild. To rebuild it, the insurance company would need you to carry $100,000, which is 100% of the house. Because a lot of homeowners claims are less than, or the majority of homeowners claims are 25,000. Some people don't think it's fair that they have to cover the full 100% of their house. A lot of people know that they're not likely to ever actually need 100% of the coverage that they have, but it can happen. So, I mean, you don't know if your house is going to be the one that burns down or not, right? So it is best to cover your house at 100%, but some people just, don't want to have to cover it at 100%. So insurance companies came up with this rule called coinsurance. And it says if you at least cover 80% of the house, they will pay the claim in full. So here we have a picture where I show that the 100,000, the 100% is everything in pink. And technically you should carry 100% of the rebuild for your home. Okay. Now, coinsurance says at least carry 80%. So in this, we represent the bottom of the house as being 80%. And in this example, 80% of 100,000 would be $80,000. Now, let's say that the customer had a claim and this claim was for $10,000. And the claim happened between the upstairs and the attic, right? Now, technically speaking, when you think about this, if they're only covering 80% of the house, but the claim happened the claim was shared between the 20% they're not covering and the 80% they are covering, being fair, the insurance company should only have to pay for the portion of the house that you're actually covering. But coinsurance says, as long as you're carrying 80, we will pay the claim in full. So if this claim was $10,000, this is a fire. If this claim was $10,000, since you're carrying at least 80%, you would be fully covered for this. Okay. And coinsurance, so coinsurance says 80%. 80%. As long as you're carrying at least 80%, they will pay all the claims in full. If you're carrying less than 80%, they will not pay the claim in full. Because imagine, again, if this represents 100% of the house, and that means $100,000, but a person decides that they only want to cover, if a person says, I only want to, this is the replacement, but let's say that a person decides to only carry 50,000 in coverage. That means that they're only covering half the house when you think about it. It wouldn't be fair for the insurance company to have to pay the full claim if this was a fire, the full claim. And let's say the claim is $20,000. It is not fair that the insurance company would have to pay this full claim when the person is only covering half the house, right? It's like you want me to cover the whole house, but you're not willing to pay to cover the whole house. Not really fair. So when a person is carrying less than 80%, they do what is called the coinsurance equation. And the coinsurance equation, the way I like to say it is, if you are cheap, we're going to be cheap. So if the homeowner decided to be cheap about their coverage, only covering 100,000 when it would be 100,000 to replace it. That's being cheap. Okay. The insurance company will not pay the full claim. They are going to do the coinsurance equation, which will give them how much they're going to actually pay towards the claim. And basically, it's a way of calculating you only covered half the house. And now keep in mind, the insurance company is okay if you carried at least 80. If you did carry at least 80, they would pay the full claim. So we can't even say, well, they'll pay half the claim, because they're technically good if you carry at least 80%. So we do the coinsurance equation to figure out how much the insurance company is going to pay if this were to happen. Okay. So first, let's make sure that we clarify. As long as the insured has 80% of the replacement cost for the home, as long as the insured has 80% of the replacement cost covered, all claims will be paid in full. Sometimes you will get a question that is clearly a coinsurance question, but you don't need to do the math because they're carrying at least 80%. If they're carrying at least 80%, then there's no math that is required. There's nothing that you have to do. The claim is paid in full. So let me show you an example of that. So if we had a question that said, the insured had $80,000 of coverage on his home. That is $100,000 replacement. So they're saying that he carried 80,000 and his home was 100,000 for replacement. He had a $30,000 fire. How much would the insurer pay? How much would the insurer pay? Okay. So this is an example of a test question that the insured had $80,000 of coverage on his home. That is $100,000 replacement cost. He had a $30,000 fire. How much would the insurer pay? 80,000 is 80% of 100. So they would pay $30,000. Our answer would be $30,000. They would pay the full claim. There is no math that we need to do here, because as long as they're carrying at least 80%, then we're good with the math. There's nothing else we need to do. As long as they're carrying at least 80%, the full claim will be paid. As long as they're carrying at least 80%, the full claim will be paid. We only do the coinsurance equation when they're carrying less than 80%. When they're carrying less than 80%. Okay. So keep in mind, you will not always be doing the coinsurance math. So I'm going to kind of move over here to give me some more space. So first we need to talk about, how do we find 80%? How do we find 80%? How do we find 80% of a number? Okay. Some people are math people. Some people are not math people. I am not a math person. I can teach you the math that I know. But I myself struggle with math. So some of you may go, oh, I already know how to find 80%. Some of you go say, I have no freaking idea. So I'm just going to make sure that we all know how to find 80% of a number. Now, most of you will get a calculator for your exam. Some states don't allow it. I don't know off the top of my head which states do and which states don't, but I'm going to teach you how to do it with a calculator. I'm going to pause for. Okay, so how do we find 80% of a number? We're going to use a calculator example. Calculator. Here's what we do. We're gonna use when we need to find 80% of a number. What we do is we take the number that we're looking at, whatever that number is. So we punch it into the calculator. We hit the multiplication symbol. So we're going to times it. Then we put in 0.80. You're basically converting 80% into a decimal. You don't need to fully understand that. You just need to know that in the calculator, you put the number you have times 0.80, and then you hit the equal. So when we were looking at 100,000 times 0.80 equal, if I were to whip up a calculator, we do 100,000 times 0.80 equal $80,000. Okay, so let's say that they tell us the replacement cost is 320,000. We take the number we're looking for. So we take the number we're looking for, the number we have times 0.80 equal. So we whip out our calculator again, make sure you clear it out. They usually give you a very simple calculator, not a smart one. So you just clear it all out. You're going to do 320,000 times 0.80 equal 256,000. And this is how we find 80% of a number. So you take the number you have, the amount of coverage or the replacement cost. This number is always the rebuild or replacement. Sometimes they'll call it rebuild. Sometimes they'll call it replacement. So when they give you a math problem like this, it said 100,000 for replacement. That's the number that goes first times 0.80 equal 80,000. Since he was carrying 80,000, they are going to pay the claim in full, because as long as you're within 80%, as long as the number of what they're carrying is that number or higher, then they are within 80%. Okay, so let me show you another example. So let's say that the insured had a home. The insured's home was $250,000 to replace. The insured had $190,000 of coverage and suffered a $20,000 loss. How much would the insurer pay? Okay, so this is an example test question. The insured home was $250,000 to replace. Remember, that's the number we're going to punch in first into our calculator. The insured had $190,000 of coverage and suffered a $20,000 loss. How much would they pay? Well, we need to find 80% of this number. So we're going to take that number, the 80% times 0.80 equal. So we get out our calculator, clear it out. 250,000 times 0.80 equal 200,000. Now, in this scenario, he is carrying 190, which is less than 200. They would not pay the full claim. They're going to pay less than the full claim. This is an example of where we would need to do the coinsurance equation. So in this example, we didn't have to do any math other than find the 80%. And once we saw that he was carrying at least 80%, they would pay the claim in full. In this example down here, he is less than what the 80%, so 200,000 is 80% of 250. He is only carrying 190, which means he is less than the 80% of the coverage that he needs, okay? So this is a question where we would need to do the coinsurance equation. So let's take a look at what the coinsurance equation is. The coinsurance equation, and your book may, and when I say book, I mean your state approved pre-licensing course, whoever you're using, ExamFX, Excel, Kaplan, 80 Banker, they may use different words for this, but the words I use is did carry. And what you did carry was what he had coverage for, what he did carry, divided by what you should carry. And there's something really important we need to focus on the should carry. The should carry is not the 250 replacement. The should carry is the 80% of 250, because remember, as long as you're carrying at least 80%, they will pay the claim in full. So the number that we put on the should carry is the 80% of replacement. The 80% of replacement. Then we multiply that times the loss, and that will equal the claim payout. So this is the coinsurance equation. Okay. So let's take a look at our numbers here for this example. What did he carry? What did he carry? He did carry 190,000. What should he have carried? He should have carried at least 200,000, because 200,000 is 80% of the replacement. So he should have carried at least 200,000. Then we're going to multiply that times the loss. The loss is 20,000. So we're going to multiply that times the loss, which is 20,000. And whatever that equals is the claim payout. Okay. So again, we're going to whip out our calculator. And you need to take this one step at a time in the calculator. You can't plug it all in at once. You got to go one step at a time. Okay. So 190,000. So what did he carry? Divided by 200,000, what he should have carried. And we technically are going to hit equal right here in the calculator. Because again, your calculator is not smart enough for you to just plug in the full equation and get the right answer. So in between dividing these two numbers, hit the equal sign, then times the loss, which is 20,000, times 20,000 equal 19,000. So over here with this question, they're going to give us, A, B, C, D. One of the choices is going to be 19,000, and that's the one we choose as our correct answer. One of the choices will be 20,000, the full claim amount. And then a couple of these will be just, one of them might be way off and one of them might be really close to 19. So if you're not super strong in math, you can run the problem twice just to make sure that you're able to get it. Okay. So keep in mind, some coinsurance questions will stop at finding 80%. And as long as they're carrying at least 80, the full claim is paid. Full claim is paid. Full claim is paid. Okay. When they're carrying less than 80%, then you have to do the coinsurance equation, did carry divided by should carry times the loss equal the claim payout. Now, some people, and I've noticed this on Excel, it's not common for the state exam to include the deductible, because we know that if you had if you have a homeowner's policy, you're likely to have a deductible. Most questions that I have seen for the exam itself will say, regardless of the deductible, they'll tell you to forget about the deductible. But sometimes your practice course may include the deductible. So if you have the deductible, you're going to do the same equation. You're going to do did carry divided by should carry times the loss equal whatever that is. Then you're going to subtract the deductible, or you could subtract the deductible over here. So if they include the deductible, you would need to take it out of the number. But very rarely I have ever actually seen that show up, other than on a practice course. So on the exam itself, the state exam itself, I have yet to see, nor have I gotten any feedback that the deductible is included. But technically in the real world, you would need to subtract your deductible. Now, one other thing to note. What if I do have a house that is $100,000 replacement, and the insured only decided to cover $50,000 of coverage, and the whole house burned down? What's going to happen when it is a full claim? A full claim, the insurance will pay the $50,000. Now that won't be enough for you to rebuild your house. You're still going to be struggling to rebuild it yourself. They'll just write you, they'll say, you know what? You didn't have enough coverage. Here's $50,000. You do what you want with it. We only owe you the $50,000 because the house burned down. But the insurance company won't help you with rebuilding because there's not enough money to rebuild. So when coinsurance only kicks in on partial losses, and a partial loss is basically anything less than the whole house being burnt down. If the whole house is utterly destroyed, which is a full claim, a total claim, then they just pay whatever coverage you had. So in this example, if his home was 100,000 replacement, he only carried 50, the whole house burned down, they're just going to pay you the 50. They won't do the coinsurance equation. You won't have enough to build the house still because you're only covering half the amount, but they won't do the coinsurance equation when it's a full claim, when it's a total loss. When it's a total loss, they just pay you exactly what you had covered. They only do the coinsurance equation on partial losses. Okay. All right. So that's the coinsurance equation with homeowners insurance. It is always 80%. So you want to make sure you know how to find 80%. And then you want to make sure that they're carrying at least 80%. If they're carrying at least 80%, then they are good. If they're carrying less than 80%, then they will do the coinsurance equation. You've got to make sure when you do the coinsurance equation that should carry. A lot of people will make a mistake and they will put the replacement down here. Instead, they'll put in this example, they'll put 250 in the equation right here instead of the 200. So remember that the bottom number is always the 80% number. It's not the full amount. Okay. All right. So this is Melissa, your insurance exam queen, sending you all the loves, all the vibes to pass your exam. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, drop a comment below about what state you're in, and I will tell you what's important. And definitely check out my website, insuranceexamqueen.com, for my class series, which are longer, in-depth videos with the gold has student notes to help you to be able to pass your exam.